Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show. I am your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Quill and the Wandering Scribe, and welcome to our first historians interview for the month of September. And joining us is a returning guest making their second appearance on the show. Now, if you remember this guest, he was part of my season one lineup of the Historians Lounge, where we talked about the Paraguayan Civil War. Now he has come back for his second appearance to tell us more about himself and his interests in history, his upbringing, and his goals going forward. And to tell us all about that and more, let's give a huge round of applause to returning guest and fellow historian, Paul Walsh. Paul, thank you so much for coming back on the show.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Nice. So, Paul, as a little refresher for our viewers and listeners, what can you tell us about your background in history as well as you as a person?
Well, starting with me as a person, I, uh, I'm not from the United States originally. I think you've heard some of this before, so it won't be surprising to you. I was born in the British Isles, and I was adopted from an orphanage in Dublin, Ireland. I'm Irish myself, and I was adopted by an Irish Catholic family. I grew up here in the United States, came over at 17 months, so I was still very young. That's why I don't have a brogue or anything. And I grew up on the East Coast of the United States, just a little outside of Philadelphia. And I think I lived a pretty typical middle class life. I was fortunate, to have that. And, you know, I went to high school and I went to Westchester University as an undergrad, earned a BA in political science. But I've always been fascinated by history. And so when I went back to school, I went back specifically for history and in particular military history, which is my
Mm.
specialty. And again, fortunate because there's not a lot of military history graduate programs in the United States. So there are very, very few around. And I was very lucky because one was in Philadelphia in Temple University. And in fact, the individual who really was head of that department was one of the major scholars of American military history, Dr. Russell F. Weigley. And so he was my advisor. And so I earned a master's in military and diplomatic history. I went through the program for the PhD. Unfortunately, didn't finish the program.
Mm.
All ABD, all but dissertation. So, but I learned an enormous amount, and it helped me to become much better at my discipline. And so at this point, I continue to teach, study, and write about history, both military history and broadly history in general. So,
Nice. Very, very nice. So, what sort of drew you to military history? What was the aha moment, so to speak?
I I think this may be common among militaries. I don't know, but it's certainly what drew me to it is a common experience for most young boys. I was in grade school, and a fellow student came in with a shopping bag full of plastic soldiers. So, and obviously I was interested and I became increasingly interested and I started reading the books in the library. And I just, went forward from there. And my interest in military history naturally over, so many decades has evolved. And it's it's gone from, being what one might call an enthusiast, a buff, to someone who is more professional
Right.
in their study of the past, and more appreciative of you know the deeper issues, and the controversies and all that sort of thing.
Right.
But I was interested from a very young age, and I stuck with it because I never stopped being interested in it. It's a fascinating subject. I know it's a funny subject because um, in the past, and this I'm pleased to say that this is really starting. It seems to me it's really starting to change among the scholarly community. But in the past, especially beginning in the Vietnam era, the academy, that is, higher education,
Hmm.
educators in higher education, um, did not had a negative reaction to military history. Military history is a bad thing. Um, you would expect from people who are as well educated as they are to be able to differentiate between studying something and advocating for it, but that wasn't necessarily the case. It's
Right.
often that's an often confused issue, thinking that, oh well, if you're interested in military history, you must be in favor of war, And the fact is that that's the last thing.
Right.
Anybody who really understands military history, really honestly understands it, would say, war is the last thing that you want to do. I mean, for God's sakes, it's such a horrific thing, and yet it's a fascinating thing. It's, in a way, I liken it to the study of disease or injury by doctors. Doctors aren't accused of being pro-disease or pro-injury because they study it, you know, but they are fascinated by it. It is a fascinating subject, and for me, and I think for other people, hopefully, it's sort of a doorway into the broader aspects of history.
Mm.
Because, as I always say, armed forces don't go to war, societies go to war. So you have to learn about the religious, social, economic, gender, racial, and so on and so forth dimensions of the societies that are waging war against one another. And in doing so, you learn about the overall history, beyond the beyond what's considered to be specifically military. So
Right.
yeah, so I've reached a point now. I don't really remember what the question originally was, which I think is a problem for historians. But there you go. Once you wind them up, they keep going like the Energizer Bunny. I mean, it's yeah. So
Yeah.
you know, but anyway, so I'll go back to you. Okay.
But that was actually a very, very perfect answer to that question. And I really, really love what you said, how, armed forces don't go to war, societies go to war. And in military
Mm,
history, when we think of military history, we think of like, the battles, the generals, the tactics. And that is true. That's only one
mm,
aspect of military history. We got to figure out,
mm,
okay, why are these
mhm.
people going to war? Why is this general in charge? Why are
Right,
they using
right.
these tactics? We
Yeah,
have to know
yeah,
the broad history of that.
right. Mhm.
So now
Yeah.
going forward in your life, Paul, after you graduated, what was sort of the goals you had as an historian going forward? What was sort of like your promise to the field, and also wherever you worked, whether it was like in public education again, if you're working for an organization that need historians, what was your promise?
Well, my interest, my enthusiasm, is not simply with learning things, but with sharing them. So those two things go hand in hand as far as I'm concerned. So, this is why I love teaching. This is why I love talking to someone like yourself. This is why I like to write, pieces for publication so that others can see it and perhaps learn from it. I see those two things as two sides of the same coin, essentially. Um, as far as goals, I don't know. I mean, I don't think I have any specific goals insofar as I say, well, this is what I'm going to accomplish, because teaching's a funny profession. As
Mm.
my wife is a therapist, and which saves me a lot of money, by the way. And, but no, she pointed out, she doesn't really know what impact she has on her clients. Oftentimes her clients, she'll have a returning client who'll say, "Oh, you said this, and it was so meaningful to me," and she might not even remember saying whatever it is the person said she said. And in a way, it's kind of with me too, because you teach students, you hope some of it takes root, you hope it makes sense,
Hmm.
and I guess uh, in the best of in the best of circumstances, you hope it helps the person understand the world that they live in a little better. Because I
Right.
mean that yeah, that's what I guess in a way that would be my goal.
Okay.
Um, and Yes, but you don't know. You really don't, in a way, you just don't know. I mean, once they're out of your classroom, if you don't stay in touch with anybody, then you really don't know what the consequences are. But you hope they're positive anyway. It's hard to know what impact you have. And I suppose this is really true of any means of communicating information.
Hmm.
Um, but I guess you have to have a certain degree of optimism. And my approach, and I think this is something that is this is my way of doing things. Is
Hmm.
I don't again, it goes back to that issue of sharing.
Right.
Okay, I don't write things, for instance, for in articles and things. I don't write things for fellow scholars.
Mm.
Okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that per se, but whenever I write something or if I'm teaching something, my 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 goal is that it is clear enough to be understood by just about anybody. They don't
Right.
have to have a prior knowledge of things. Now, obviously, if you submit a manuscript for publication in a periodical about something. Now, I've been sending things to a commercial publication, Strategy and Tactics. Okay, and there are basic things you don't have to explain to the readership there. You don't have to
Hmm.
explain what a tank is. You don't have to explain what strategy is. This sort of thing. But nevertheless, clarity
Yes.
is something that I really try to emphasize in my communications, whether it's written or verbal, because um, again, I want it to be able to be disseminated. I don't want it to just be something put in a book that goes on a shelf that one or two people in the world might take down to look at in 1,000 years. You get the idea basically.
Right.
I mean, it's yeah, I'm so in that sense, um I don't believe in the notion of an ivory tower.
Mm.
Um but I don't know. I don't know how, to what degree other scholars or other professors do either. I don't think most of I've been privileged to have instructors.
Right.
that are clear, and I don't think that they feel that they're above the common masses or something. They
Hmm.
don't. In fact, um, my advisor, Dr. Weigly, once told us in class that he began teaching at an Ivy League college, University of Pennsylvania, which is a great institution. I use their library all the time. It's a magnificent library. But he, I can't quote the exact statement, but he said, I found a lot of people there who thought a great deal of themselves without any particular reason to do so. In other words, um, he wanted to go to Temple, which is where he went, because it wasn't an exclusive institution. It was
Mm.
it. I love my alma mater, not because I went there, but because, and this is something that you'll hear, Temple is a people's university. You don't have to be, extremely wealthy to attend Temple. And it's a wonderful mix of people from the inner city, people from the suburbs, people from all different classes, all from all different backgrounds, and which is what the university experience or higher education experience should be, part of what it should be, not just surrounded by people who go to the same country club you know
Right.
so yeah, so once again, I'm in the position I don't even remember what the devil you asked me in first place, but
No, but you did enter, and you know what? It is, very, very true. Like for my own writings, whenever I've written articles for magazines, I always try to think of, okay, who's actually going to read this. It's going to be like a mix of, like, okay, you're going to have people who are knowledgeable, who have an idea of what the topic is, and then you have people who have no idea of what the
hmm
topic is. And
yeah,
then honestly, it's a window for them to learn something completely new. And
one would
now,
hope.
yeah, one would hope. And now we actually turn to like a very personal question, a reflective question, which I love sharing with all my guests, which is, well, especially for historians. And I'd love to hear your thought on this, Paul, which is, as historians, it is a very lonely occupation in some regards, depending on what field you go into. And I've talked with like a lot of other historians, people from uh, the past who are part of the Historians Lounge season 1, returning guests from the podcast days, and they've all sort of said like the same thing, that you know we historians, we always want to get the higher tier jobs, working in government, being a government historian, and so forth. That is the ultimate dream, but it's not easy, and sometimes we have to be uh freelance historians where we are getting different skills, applying our knowledge in different avenues, and it is
Mhm.
kind of, in a way, deflating. I've had some historians say that, the
Mhm.
anxiety builds up. Am I actually using my degree to the
Mm.
fullest potential? Am I using my
Mhm.
knowledge to the fullest extent in my I feel like, for me, my background is a classical historian for the age of antiquities. And for
Mm.
me, I am putting all of that into writing magazine articles of the
Mm.
past,
Mhm.
writing my own stories. But I would love to apply it in like a museum setting where, yes, there is a separate program for those who specialize in museums who work with artifacts, but I would love to just be in that room with the artifacts to give
Mhm.
the history. And all that buildup leads to imposter syndrome and so forth. So for you, Paul, when you graduated from university, did you sort of have that feeling of like anxiety or imposter syndrome early on in your career? And if so, or if not, what has continued to discipline you to be the best person you can be in your field of
Mm.
history?
Well, I mean, if you care about your discipline, if you care about the subject, you're going to want to be, the best. I mean, you're going to want to do the best job in terms of presenting information and making sure that the information is as accurate as possible,
Mm-hmm.
while, and this is such an important point, while making it clear to readers and to students and everybody else that a historian is only as good as his sources. These are
Yes,
my
that is very
sources.
true.
These are my sources. I can only say that this is what I relied on. I try to find good sources, both primary and secondary. And when using primary sources, I try to understand their context and not simply
Mm-hmm.
accept whatever's written at face value. You, as somebody who deals with antiquity, should certainly know that.
Yes.
But I don't think I've ever I felt on I felt disappointment. We all feel disappointment,
Mm-hmm.
and life, we all know, I think at our age, okay, we all know that life involves compromises.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, as if you can, if you can accept that, be comfortable with those things, you know, um, yeah, I mean, I wasn't really that concerned. I knew that without a PhD, I was not likely to be teaching in a university.
Right.
That's just a fact. Um, I was an adjunct where I taught for 9 years in a community college, which I liked. In a way, it was the same kind of atmosphere as Temple.
Mm.
It was open to anybody. It was very accessible. So I like that. And I always felt when I was doing my courses, no slag on high school historians, but I always felt that I was trying to give my students perhaps their first good experience with the
Right.
topic of history, and I tried to do that by trying to bring it alive in a lot of different ways, with bringing artifacts into the classroom,
Mm.
with when I couldn't take them on a field trip, with assigning them papers that were essentially field trips to museums and other historical sites around here. And once again, very lucky. This is a wonderful place to be for history. I mean, obviously, Philadelphia, the founding of the nation, but there's so much more here. There are wonderful museums, wonderful, that have great displays on ancient history, medieval history, on the civilizations of China, of Islam, in the Middle East, on and on and on.
Right.
So, but getting back to, yeah, that's what I understood the limitations of a master's degree,
Mm-hmm.
and in a way, you know, I think I found it more enriching, more satisfying to work with people who aren't history majors, because again, like I said, I was trying to light an interest in them, or at least give them a good experience and let them understand that the past can be so interesting. It's so fascinating. My definitions for the past is human nature in action. That's the past.
Right.
And human beings are probably the most fascinating creatures on the planet. They do the most ridiculous things and the most amazing, beautiful thing. They are so, I almost want to quote the original Planet of the Apes, where Dr. Zaius says to Charlton Heston, it seems that your folly goes hand in hand with your wisdom, for human beings. So true,
Right.
so very true, but that's what makes it interesting, so yeah, I wasn't worried about that. um I do what I can. In a sense, I'm almost like a gig historian. What I do now, is I teach for adult education programs, which are
Mm.
primarily aimed at generally retired adults, people, and they take the classes not for credit, they take them because they're interested.
Right.
So, it's not like, when I was teaching at community college where I'm going to have, maybe some students are interested. Most of them are there because they have to have that elective, you know.
Right.
Um, but and that obviously makes it a lot easier. On the other hand, I only get a stipend, so it's not
Hmm.
really something to live on. I you know I think there's two ways from my point of view, from my what I've thought about it. I think there's two ways, well, maybe three ways, three ways of being a professional of a historian, and indeed a professional historian. I'll say that. I'll say that as a professional historian. Okay, one way is the obvious way. You get your PhD, you get a position at an institution of higher learning, or at a museum, or
Hmm.
for the government. Okay. Of course, we all know that there are far more people with PhDs in history than there are those positions.
Yes,
That's the
that's true.
reality, of course. Yeah, sure. So, um, the second thing that you can do is you can be
Oh,
sort of, in a sense, or are you still there? Oh, yeah, there you go. Sort of a sense, a part-time professional historian where you have a day gig to support yourself, but
mm-hmm.
on the side, you you pursue your interests, with whatever time and energy you have left over, you know if that's possible. Now, I know in real life that's asking a lot, and especially, God help us, especially if you have a family, you know but then the kids grow up and leave the nest. So, but still, I think that that's something that you may be able to balance. Okay. The third option is, if you're a male historian, find a really wealthy widow, or the opposite gender, whatever, but there you go. uh if you have that passion, I would hope you stick with it in one way or another. Oh,
Mm.
you were talking about being lonely too, weren't you?
Yes.
Well, I think that, you know, the generally speaking, the basis for friendship is a shared interest,
Hmm.
and historians tend to find each other. You
That is
know,
true. That is true.
yeah. So I am sure that, like myself, you probably have quite a number of friends who are as interested in history. Maybe
Yes.
not the same period or aspects or things like that, which is good because that
Hmm.
means you learn from them and they learn from you. But yeah, it's same for me. I have a number of friends who, I've known for quite a long time, and now, not come on, now with the internet, as if it was yesterday. Uh, well, the internet. We, like what we're doing right here with you and me, what your program is doing. We're able to bring people together. So now I'm able to
Absolutely.
contact people, wherever, wherever they are on the planet. I'm able to contact them, and they're able to contact me, and we're able to trade information, and speak with one another, and it's wonderful in that respect. Interesting. And I'm sorry, this is a bit of a tangent, but it is something important. It's
No
something that you
worries. No
probably,
worries. Continue.
yeah. I want to send you a link to this article that I read online, and it was about the issue of the internet, and podcaster historians. Um, and you're a podcaster historian, but they come in all kinds of flavors, don't they?
Hmm.
And the article talked about the problem that people like you and myself and other people who are serious historians um, uh, uh, are up against because of a combination of human nature and algorithms.
Yes.
Yeah. So, the more sensational the information you offer, the more likely it's going to get more hits, and then it's going to attract more attention, and snowball effect. And sadly, it's often people who um, are not serious historians,
Right.
are not, trying to be objective or trying to base their information, what they say on, serious research, if any. And they were talking about this because what was it? I'm trying to think of the guy's name. Um, some some um, some fella who was on Fox, who's now on a different system, was interviewing what constituted a Holocaust denier, you know, and the person from Fox, who has a big following, was proclaiming this guy as one of our great historians. It was, So I mean, that's why I want to send you this article, because I thought it was really interesting, because it talked about the challenges for people like you and me with regard to the internet. And
Yes.
it's tough. It's really, really difficult because, when it comes right down to it, this is what I said in my comment to the article. Um, you know, Learning is hard work,
It
you
is.
know? Yeah. But we live in a culture of, instant gratification that sees, boredom as something to be avoided at all costs. you know? And that's a problem, because like it or not, you have to put in, effort and time, and focus to learn. And this is
Mhm.
true of anything. It's not just history, obviously. And our society, essentially, our popular culture, essentially runs counter to that. And of course, now we have technology that is just another feature of that popular culture that is a problem in terms of getting people to sit down and read something lengthy. I mean, it can be on the internet. I don't have any problems with that. But I mean, instead of instant shortcut, you know, uh, um, history that
Right.
is not nuanced, is not sourced in any way. All these different things. So yeah, I'll send you a copy of that article, because I think it's worth reading. I thought it really brought up a lot of points that I've seen elsewhere, but I thought this one kind of took it all together and synthesized it very well. So
Yes, absolutely. And you kind of touched on two things that I loved talking about on the show with both authors and historians. The first and foremost, going back to what you said about teaching when you were an adjunct professor at the community college, you wanted your classes to be, the first introduction into history, that's fun and engaging. Because I definitely feel, and a lot of historians that I've talked with agree that in high school, now it varies on the teacher and how they approach the subject, but a lot of people in high school, when they are taught history, it's usually, unfortunately, the names, dates, and place, and that kills any engagement in the study of history. And thankfully, I actually had a great teacher, Mrs. Singleton, who made history so much fun, so much of a great experience, engaging. We would have debates, we would have study sessions. It was an incredible experience, and it was from that class that my passion for history changed over time, and ultimately it's why I loved taking history classes in college, and why now I love sharing history with other people, other historians, and that's present in my writings, present in my videos, and so forth. And then another thing that you touched on was, of course, the three paths for like professional historians, where it's like, if you work in the government, you have like a day job, or you marry your third one, you marry someone vastly to help cover the expenses. And that kind of relates to my twofold paths, which kind of also relates to what you mentioned, brought up, the article about, podcast historians and the internet, which is, in my opinion, for historians, there are two paths: to be an historian and to be known as an historian, because those are two very different things and
That's a
have
really
two.
good point.
Yes. So
Yeah.
to be an historian, in my opinion, is an individual dedicated to the study of the scholarship, where, money is not the driving factor, but it's nice to get a little something here and there. To be known as an historian is an individual dedicated to, promoting their work in periodicals, going on shows, being on podcasts, so forth, whatever. Now, both of these paths, as I said before, have their own trials and hurdles, and neither one path is, wrong or better than the other. But I definitely feel for first-time historians getting right out of college, the second path is the very, how do I say, it's the most tempting one, to be known as an historian. And especially those who have like worked on like a thesis or a dissertation throughout their academic career, and they feel like this is going to be the start of my legacy. When here's another truth: just like in the publishing world, in the historian's world, just because you've written something or you've worked on something or you've argued something religiously that off the back of your hand, it does not guarantee the start of your legacy as an historian in the long-term run. And ultimately, that's a hard pill to swallow. And I've met a lot of people who have, agreed to the same thing, that it's like the biggest lie you can believe, that your own work's going to be the start of your legacy, when ultimately it doesn't guarantee. It does put your foot in the door and gets your presence known, but it doesn't guarantee the start of your legacy. But it should not deter you from pursuing history further, to contribute to the scholarship, to learn more, to build your knowledge, and so forth. So, Paul, what is your thought on sort of this discussion that, in the world of history, there is no guarantee that your legacy is going to be created with, your first project, but it may come about with your later one?
Well, we're all human, right? We're all human. We all want to be noticed.
Yes.
That's just the way it is, and that's just, the way it is. You can aspire to that sort of thing, but ultimately, I think the question has to come down to this: what's more important to you? Your fame, if you like, or the subject that you're working on? I think if you're a professional historian, it should be the subject that you're working on.
Right.
I know that it's a little tough, but it is kind of a selfless. It's a calling, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It's a calling. You asked me before, what got you into history and this sort of thing, military history. And I've often said to other people, I said, well, I heard there was a lot of money in it. So, but I mean, yeah, I mean, I think I told you this before, one of my professors at Temple, or no, this was when I was an undergrad, at Westchester, said, if you're interested, if you want to become a historian, prepare yourself for genteel poverty. You know,
Yeah, I think you did mention that.
Yeah, but I mean, uh, it's what do you care about? What is it you really care about? Yes, you want to, of course, you want to be known. Of course you do. You know, um, sometimes you have to be satisfied with being known among your colleagues, which is not the general public, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you know, I think you can take some comfort. I certainly do. I think you can take some comfort from what you do in your own research when you're researching things. You take books off the shelf, or you purchase copies or whatever, from a library or whatever, and and you crack it open and you find this wonderful, wonderful work that someone has done. This person isn't famous, okay, and in many cases, this person isn't here with us anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but you appreciate it, don't you? You know, you are impressed. Um, you admire the work that this person did, and you appreciate that it's there, and that it's able to inform your research, and it's a valuable source of information and understanding. So, in that respect, you write a book. It's not a New York Times bestseller.
No.
Okay, so what? Um, you know, you can at least hope that in the future someone will take that down off a library shelf or get a used copy somewhere, and it will be valuable to them, and you will have contributed, in that way to the furthering of our understanding of the story of humanity. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, I was at a conference, at a talk by a very nice guy, John Shina, I think his name is. I know the last name. I think it's John Shina. And now his specialty is Latin American military history. Something that the the shelves of bookstores are crowded with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and but he like practically every PhD graduate, his dissertation became his first book. It was on the naval, and it was a naval history. Okay, not just military, naval history
Right.
of Latin America. Okay, wonderful book, by the way, published by Naval Institute Press, the U.S. Navy's publishing house, and I had a copy with me because I wanted a signature, and I came up and I handed it to him, and of course he signed it. He says, "Oh, you're the other person who bought that." But another thing is that I recommend things to people all the time, you know, or this is something else that I do, which if someone out there hasn't thought of doing this, I would recommend it. If you see an inexpensive, probably a used or discounted, copy of a book that you think is worthwhile, pick up a copy or two and donate them to the libraries. You know, I had the good fortune of getting, well, somebody's military history library was on sale at this small, out of the way used bookstore that I happened to go to. In fact, I wasn't even going to go to that day. It's on the way to the New Jersey shore. My wife and I were going down, and I said, well, I don't know. I didn't see much there the last time. And my wife actually said, no, you wait, maybe there's something there. That's the thing about used bookstores. You just never know. So I
Yeah, it's
went, and
true.
yeah, this guy, yeah, I left with 3 shopping bags worth of books. Okay.
That sounds like me at Barnes and
Yeah,
Noble.
right. So, but here's the thing. Okay. Yes, some of them were for my shelves. The majority of them were copies of books I already owned. And I gave these to Delaware County Community College's library, for their shelves, And by the way, when I and this is something else that hopefully maybe other people out there who tune into this blog will pursue if they happen to be instructors or teachers. When I taught classes there, history classes, um, I insisted that one of the report papers, one of the writing assignments was going to be based solely on printed books. And
Mm.
I took my class to the library and showed them how to go about doing research. And I said to them, this isn't meant to be a replacement for looking for information on the internet. It's meant to be a complement to that. You
Right.
will find, because as a community college, most of the people that go there will take their credits and go to a 4-year college. Having already gotten halfway through that, it's less expensive. It's a good way to do that. And I told them, I said, when you go on to your 4-year college, you're going to be responsible for doing some serious work, some serious papers. You need to know how to do research in a library and not just on the screen. The screen is fine, but you need that in addition to it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I insisted on having them do that, to learn how to find information in a library, in the books in the library that were there, and how to cite your sources, of where you got your information and this sort of thing, because those are good skills to have if you're going to go on to get a BA or a BS in a 4-year institution, you know. So yeah, that was something that I did. So yeah. So going back to that, yeah, if it's a good idea to if you feel something's worthwhile to contribute to the library. I can't guarantee it's going to be on a shelf. That can happen, that happens, but you know that's that, but at least you made the effort, and there's a chance that it'll be on the shelf, and in turn, that means that it's at least there for somebody to discover it, so hopefully that's what happens, but yeah, as far as feeling dejected because you're not going to be famous. Well, guess what? The 99.99999% of the human beings in the world are not going to be famous. you know? So I hope that doesn't come as a surprise to anybody here, but and fame is ephemeral. And it can also be corrosive, Look at all the people whose lives have been ruined by becoming famous, you
And it's also
know?
true.
Yeah, so I mean, in a way, it's almost better to sort of be under the radar in some respects. I think I think what we all want as historians is to be acclaimed and
Yes.
and celebrated in our field, you
Yes.
know. Yeah, and I think that's something you want. And you do what you can with that. You try your best, and hopefully you do. I mean, most societies, academic, peer-reviewed journal societies have awards, best history book, by first time author, best history book about this or that, So there certainly are accolades out there that you can win, but I think hopefully you take satisfaction from the work that you do. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I don't know about you, but when I get something published, that I'm so happy about that. And I
Same
love
here.
sitting down and reading my own work. And I'll tell you why I like reading my own articles, because they say what has to be said exactly as I would say
Mm-hmm. Definitely,
it.
definitely, Paul. And we've now come to the final question of this interview, and you probably already answered it in the last part
My
of the.
my favorite color is green. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say.
Oh boy. But we've now arrived at the final question of this incredible interview, Paul. You kind of maybe have already answered it in the previous question, but maybe you have more to say for this question. And here it is. So with everything you've learned as an historian on this journey of yours from beginning of your life to now, and looking back at everything that you've achieved and done, what is your word of wisdom to future historians or prospective history enthusiasts watching and viewing this episode right now?
Oh, I would say get a degree as a plumber or dentist. I'd say that would be no. No, 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 no. Anyway, um, if you really love this, you'll find a way to pursue it. You may not be able to pursue it as a means of making a living. That's the fact. God bless you if you do. But you may not, but try, but I hope that if it's something you really care about, you'll be able to pursue it in some way. And there are always ways of becoming involved in what you like to do. I love writing articles and submitting them for publication. And in this day and age, that's a very easy thing to do, because there are so many platforms for that. Obviously not just in actual, published, magazines on the stands, but on the internet and that sort of thing. And you can do podcasts. You
Hmm.
can do YouTube presentations. There's a lot of wonderful
Yes.
YouTube presentations out there. They're a lot of fun. And they involve a lot of creativity, which is a fun part of that. You can volunteer. You can volunteer in at museums. You can volunteer for programs in or out of schools. Like I said, I do adult education classes. There are a
Hmm.
lot of those programs around. They're fun to do, and they're stress free, because you don't have to grade any tests. You don't have to read any reports. You don't all those different things. So those are things you can do without having to be a professional historian. I mean, no, what I mean is not professional, but without having a job, like a support your life job
Right.
as a historian, right? um and you know I guess you have to pursue what you're interested in, but I would say, while you pursue what your interests are, try to be open to more than just that. Try to expand, you know, because if your only interest is I don't know, the selling of cotton in India in 1775, that's a little narrow.
Right.
Yeah, right. So you want to get, you want to do more than that. I'm this is a like they would say on the TV show, it's a curse and a blessing, monk. You it's a personal place. I have yet to find a military history subject that I don't like. So I cover from ancient Mesopotamia to, you know, the Korean Vietnam War, and everything in between, and everything on the surface of the globe. I literally have books. I literally have books on the military history of the island of Ceylon.
Mm.
The Welsh militia in the 18th century. Um, you know, you name it. I've got something on it. But I've tried to do that, and I've tried to familiarize myself with that, and in that way, I can cover more ground. Um, and it's always interesting, because even if we love something, we need to walk away from it now and again. And so if you have all those different things, if you get tired of US Civil War, you can walk over to ancient China. If you get tired of ancient China, you can go over to I don't know, the Second World War in North Africa. It's endless, isn't it? It's just endless. You never run out of things to learn about. That saying, I know that it's so very true. The more you learn, the more you realize how little you know. It's so very true. And it's a good thing, because yeah, I think one of the things that a good historian should have is humility.
Hmm.
Is to recognize that what you think is limited, and you should always try to be open to learning more and to listening to other takes on things that you think you already know, and this sort of thing. So yeah, I think that's a healthy attitude. Also, I think if you're a historian, it doesn't hurt to have a good sense of humor.
Yes,
In fact, if you're a human being, it doesn't hurt to have a good sense of humor, you know,
absolutely.
because it's a crazy world we live in. And historians know that even better than most people, right?
Yes,
you know,
that is
yeah.
true. That is true.
And you can either laugh or cry. So take your choice. But yeah, it's like anything else. You pursue something that you care about, and you find a way of making it work for yourself. Whether you have to have a side job, your day job, or whether you can actually make that into a way of making a living. Or again, there's that wealthy widow option there. um I'm pushing that today. That's my advice for the historians out there. Yeah. So so there you go.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. And a perfect way to end this amazing historians interview. Thank you all so much for joining us for another historians interview here on our channel. A huge thank you to my friend Paul Walsh for coming back on the show again for his second appearance. And if you want to see Paul's first appearance on the show to talk about the Paraguayan Civil War, I will link that video right over here for you to look at. And if you want to follow Paul on social media, I will link also down below LinkedIn, where Paul is most frequently at. You can talk to him about military history, any articles he's written about, anything in the past, or if you just want to just say hi, I will link that down below. And also, as I've mentioned in my previous videos, Michael the Last Angel of Earth is out on barnesandnoble.com in ebook and paperback. I will link that down below for you to check it out, to read the reviews, and order yourself a copy. Again, a huge thank you to my friend Paul for coming back on the show. It was a great time having him here, and I hope you've all enjoyed, my viewers and listeners. And as always, make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below what was your favorite part of the interview. And until next time, this has been The Wandering Scribe, and the Wandering Quill signing out.